that. The other thing that you need to be aware of is this is being recorded. I just started the recording right now. So if you do miss something or you get cut off or you find that you have to leave, I understand that many of us are working from home. And so that comes with its own set of challenges. So if at any time you need to bump out of here, this is being recorded and it'll either come to you as a link. This whole thing will come to you as a link saying, hey, if you want to view this again, check it out. Or the other thing that I do is I go through the recordings and I actually edit them down a little bit so that they can be little video snippets on our website as well. So that'll be an opportunity later for you to access these materials if necessary. So I want to make sure that everybody can hear me and that you understand the chat feature. So I'm just going to ask a very simple question here. I'm actually going to ask 2 questions to get us started. But the first one is going to be, just tell me where you're listening from. So give me your city in either the chat box or in the Q&A box. Just tell me what city you're listening from right now. Good, good. I see a lot of repeats from the earlier presentation, so that's good. We have Phoenix represented, and Chandler and Glendale and Gilbert all kind of in the Phoenix area. Tempe, Flagstaff, Sun City, Payson is all represented. So we've got a variety of the state pretty well covered, north and south and central. So good. All right. So the next question I want to ask, just to get a feel for the audience, obviously this is the second presentation that I've given today. Many of you were on that first one. They are standalone presentations. However, I want to see how many people repeating from the first one. So if you'll just put a quick yes or no into the chat on whether you were at my 10 a.m. session this morning or not, just so I get a feel for how much I need to go into. So if you'll just put a yes, you were here at the 10 a.m. one, or no, you weren't at the 10 a.m. one, just so I can get a feel for the audience a little bit. Okay, good. So we have a split. Most of the people here were at the 10 a.m. one, but there were a few that were not. So I am going to do a little bit of a review of some of the stuff we covered in the beginning, but not entirely, not the whole map making stuff, but some of the basic, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So for some of you that might have heard this a little bit, just for the next 5 minutes, just you can either ignore me or you can maybe it'll be a recap of some of the information that we're going on. But first, let me do a quick little introduction for those of you that don't know me. It seems like most people I actually know that are on here, but I work for the Arizona Game and Fish Department. We are the state government agency that is responsible for managing more than 800 species found in Arizona, wildlife species found in Arizona. We do not take general taxpayer dollars, so we are not your typical government agency. There's nothing from your sales tax and nothing from your income tax that comes to us. We operate more on a business model, or what we call a user pay model. So it's the users of the resource that are the ones that are paying for it. In this case, that's hunting and fishing. When you buy a hunting or fishing license, that money comes directly to the department, and we use that for on-the-ground management of those species. We do have a couple other funding sources, the most notable of which that I want to talk about is the Heritage Fund, which comes from the state lottery. This was a money amount that was voted on by the voters in 1990, which basically said we want to take a certain amount of the money from the lottery and use it for various state programs. And of those, a certain amount is going to go to the state parks to operate and kind of preserve our cultural and our natural heritage. And then a certain amount of money is going to go to the Arizona Game and Fish to preserve our wildlife heritage. And that's what we use for a lot of our non-game or our non-huntable species and our endangered species. So things like bald eagles and Mexican gray wolves and black-footed ferrets are off. Some of the funding for those come from our state lottery dollars. In addition, our education program, the one that I operate, which is our Focus Wild Arizona program, which is our K-12 sort of wildlife education program. My name is Eric Proctor, and I am the wildlife education coordinator. So I kind of oversee the Focus Wild program. It falls under my responsibility. In that role, I like to tell people I work kind of behind the scenes, so I don't go into classrooms very often. You're not going to see me giving classroom presentations. We just don't have a lot of that staffing capacity. What we have found where the value is working with you guys as educators. So I help you bring wildlife issues and wildlife concepts into your classroom or your home environment or your museum environment or whatever that might be. My role is to sort of be that support for you there. So I do professional development. I've obviously been doing a lot of webinars right now because that's where we're at with the situation we're dealing with, trying to provide you guys with resources And I've been hoping the last few, including this one, that yes, that there's a wildlife spin that we like to put on it, but you can obviously use the skills that you gain from this particular training in other subjects as well. And then I also do curriculum development, resource development, and things like that. I'm a former middle school science teacher. I taught in the Littleton School District over in Avondale, and then I taught in the Kyrene District over in Chandler for a little bit. Taught primarily 7th grade science, did a little bit of social studies as well. I've also been involved in non-formal science education for a number of years as well, mostly while I was teaching. It was sort of a second job. I worked at the Phoenix Zoo, worked at the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum when I was in college. I worked at the Challenger Space Center. So I've been involved in science education in Arizona for over 20 years. So that's me. That's my organization. Let's talk briefly about GIS, because that's the capacity for us to build these online maps. Since there are some new people joining us, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I want to at least lay the groundwork. GIS is Geographic Information Systems. Basically anything that you can map, that you can put on the physical anything that's on the physical Earth, we can map it. And so geographic information systems, all that stuff that it takes to build this digital map. And so think about a point on Earth, whether it's a tree, whether it's a house, whether it's a rock, whether it's a road, whether it's a stoplight, whatever it is, it has information contained with it. What we can do is we can box up all the data associated with that physical point, and we can map it in addition to the actual location. So as long as we have a data point, a location point, we can embed tons of information in conjunction with it. There's an example of kind of what this looks like on the user end, on your end. In the image that's there on the right. This is sort of what we deal with in GIS is what are called data layers. So every layer is there's geographic stuff. So we could have a layer that shows street data, for example, and then there could be a layer that shows all the buildings in an area, and then there could be a layer that shows the plants and trees. And what GIS does is it takes all those and puts it into one big map. Okay, and we can turn on and off different layers to get a different picture, or to see a different element in the context. So we could see what the vegetation looks like in the context of the street data, and we can remove the buildings or any extra noise like that. That's the power of GIS on the user end, is you have the capacity to view these maps and turn on and off the information that you're interested in without losing the data altogether. Okay, so you can look at the data you're interested in. Some examples of GIS, if you're not familiar with it, you've probably been interacting with it. Google Earth, Google Maps, Apple Maps, those are all examples of GIS-based technology. The fact that you can put a point on Earth and then you can get directions there, and then it can show you the traffic and how long it's going to take to get there, or if there's an accident and it reroutes you. All of this is being done in the realm of GIS. Another example is Have a Map, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I want to show you Have a Map, just so you can see what kind of what these maps could look like that you could be building. So this is Have a Map. It's developed by the Arizona Game and Fish Department. It was a way for us to manage wildlife a little bit better and work on setting priorities for managing wildlife. But this is a basic map. It's actually a very active map. So just like in Google Earth, I can scroll around, I can zoom in, and I can zoom out of it. But over here are the layers, and this is where the power of GIS comes in. So there's a ton of data underneath this map that you can't see right now, but you as the user have the capacity to control what data you want to see, so that you can run your own analysis or whatever it might be. So over here are layers, and these boxes here are how I turn them on and off. So I can select a layer. In this case, let me select wildlife linkages. So I'm going to click this one that says wildlife linkages, and it's going to take a minute for the layer to come up. It's thinking, and it's trying to roll it in, and hopefully this is a pretty big data file that's on this one, so it takes a little bit of time. Oh, you know what I have to do? I have to turn on. So this is an example of a layer that I've turned on, but there are sub layers that have to be turned on beyond that. So if I start turning on different layers, you'll see that these things start popping up on the map. There's habitat blocks, there's potential linkage zones, And so what this is a map that we've created that allows us, we've evaluated habitats across Arizona and identified areas where there has been fragmentation and where we can try to develop linkages. So where are the potential ideas where we can build linkages to eliminate some of that habitat fragmentation. And so you can see these are the potential linkage zones. There's all these sort of greenish colors in here. The orange is where we're missing some linkages, so we may need to go in there and either work on building overpasses or underpasses on highways, or we may need to look at building green spaces or things like that to help wildlife move from one habitat to another. This is just one example. You could also look on here when I look at habitat. What I've got here are different species. So let's say I'm interested in some different mammals. I can click on mammal distributions. First of all, I have to turn the mammal distributions on. And then if I'm interested in looking at what the ranges of some of these different species are, I could go down here and say, oh, I'm interested in spotted bats. And I wonder where spotted bats are found in Arizona. When I click on that, you can see that this is the potential habitat where spotted bats could be found in Arizona. It doesn't show me that they're there. This isn't live and it's not following bats or anything like that. It's giving me the potential habitat, suitable habitat for spotted bats. I could turn that one off and I could do the same thing and say, I want to know where ocelots could be. An ocelot, this is the suitable potential habitat for ocelots in Arizona, is that reddish area that's gone in there. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about these interactive digital maps. You can build the map and you can decide what layers you want to exist on the map, which is what this thing is, and then you share that map to the world, and then the world, in this case could be your students, could turn on and off layers just like I've been doing with Habamap. Right, and so that you can control the type of data they see, and then they can sort of manipulate the data and look at it, and maybe they can find certain connections. How cool would it be? Example, on this particular map, I have ocelot here, and then I'm going to keep the ocelot map open, but then I'm going to look at here's the one I want to look at. Biotic communities. So biotic communities are like the different vegetative communities. I can put these layers on top of each other. So I have in the layer that has all the green and purple and orange and all that stuff in the background. That's the biotic communities map. And then those dots that you saw earlier are the ocelot. So you could have a student look at this and they could start trying to describe what type of habitats ocelots could be found in. Now they could read about that in a book, or you could actually have them go on here and try to figure out what this might look like. And they can go in here and say, oh, I wonder what that habitat is. And they can go over here. They can go into the biotic communities, expand the menu, and they would see that they can try to identify what that particular landscape might be, what that particular habitat might be. So Suzanne is asking, is this where they've actually been seen or based on habitat characteristics only? On this particular data layer, that's a good question, Suzanne. This particular data layer is potential habitat that they could be found in. It's not where they have been seen. This is suitable habitat. And the way you can check that is when you go into the mammal distributions, if that's what you're talking about, if you click on this little informational icon, it will pull up some information about that. And it tells you where the data came from. And then here's the whole thing. You could click on the species distribution metadata, which gives you how it was calculated and figured out. That's a really good question. It's important to know, especially when you're dealing with animals. A lot of times when you see a range, it's not where they are currently or where they have been cited, but potentially what is suitable range for them. So good question. You always want to be understanding and knowing how to find that data, the metadata behind the data that you're looking for. So I just wanted to show Habamap. I've done entire webinars on just how to use Habamap in the classroom, but I just want to show you because it's a good example of what GIS is. So you're basically going to create a map similar to this, maybe doesn't have all the features that Habamap does, but you can create a map with data that our purpose today is to show you with data that you already have, or that you can collect in the field, or that your students could go collect, or they can do it from their computer as well. We'll talk about a couple different ways to add data, and then create the layers, and then your kids or anybody could interact with the maps. Your students could create maps that they could share with other students and so on. All right, so how are they going to do this? So let's go back here. We're going to use a program that we introduced in the earlier session. So it's called Arcgis Online. It's just at arcgis.com. I'm going to show it to you, so I would ask that you just look and appear, and then after this is done, you can go log in and create an account if you don't have one. There are two different types of accounts. We're going to be working out of the free personal account today. It's just my own personal account that I've created. It costs nothing. Esri doesn't like spam you with a bunch of stuff when you create it. You create this account. It's free. It allows you to add layers, create maps, do everything that we're going to show you today. The only thing that it lacks really is some of the more advanced analysis tools. There is a little bit of analysis, like you can figure out how long something is and things like that, but you can't do some of the higher level analysis mapping, like density mapping and things like that. If you want to do some more of that stuff, or if you want to have better control over your student, because so your students could go on and create a personal account. The older students, that would be very easy for. For the younger students, if you're looking at elementary age, you may want the parents to create the account, for example. They're going to have their individual accounts. They don't have to access the maps if you make the maps public, but if they're going to create maps, they're going to need to have an account. In an organizational account, not only do you get the analysis tools, more advanced analysis tools, but they have all sorts of settings where you can create groups and you can create classes. So you could create the accounts for your students and then give them the login information, so your students aren't sharing email addresses or anything like that. And then you can actually maintain control. You can have it where you can actually go see the accounts and things like that. There's a little bit more with the organizational account. Esri, which is a company that creates Arcgis Online, they are offering their organizational account for free to every school in the country. Basically, they've been doing that for years. That is not something unique to just the situation we're in right now. That is their policy. I've created a short link for you if you want to go in there. There's a quick form that you fill out, and then somebody will be in touch with you to sort of look at fill out what that looks like. I would recommend, though, that if you plan on this being a school-wide or a or district-wide thing, that maybe you work with your district technology person or whatever that might be to get that account. That way, it's consistent across your district or school. But if you don't have anybody in that position, like when I was teaching one time, I didn't really have any. So if I want to do this, it would be me. I would be responsible for it. So I'd have to go in and create the account for my school. And then Esri can answer a lot of those things. I can't deal with that. I don't work for Esri. Esri has nothing to do with us. We purchase their product to do our GIS mapping at the department, but all I do is I use it. I feel that it's a very powerful tool that has a lot of educational applications, and that's what I'm presenting on. I'm by no means an expert on all of the Esri functionality. With that said, now let's go ahead and we don't need that yet. I'm going to go ahead and jump into ArcGIS. So I brought up my account. And let me actually go back to the home. So when you first create an account and you log in, this is the screen that's going to pop up. You can see that it has my information. That's my login, and this is what you see. And at the top menu, these are your different navigation pieces. We're going to be focusing on map today, but understand that anytime you create a map and you save it, it stays in your account. This is a cloud-based account. You can actually upload files and pictures and other things to this. It serves almost like its own drive. But any content that you create, any map that you create, it's going to be stored in your content section. So if I click on content, now I've created a bunch of stuff. There's a ton of stuff in here that I've created. For those of you that were in my earlier webinar, you can still see the map that I created earlier, but I have a ton of different maps. All of these are maps or layers or other things that I've created. It's just stored in there. And you can find that at any time, usually up here in the upper bar, or it'll be in the upper left-hand corner. There'll be a little drop down where you can get to your content if for any reason, and that's where this menu will pop up. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to map. And many of you, we've already been through this in the earlier session, so we're going to do a very, very quick run through. I don't want to go over everything and how to create every type of map that's in here, but we create a map and it's going to bring up brand new map. If for some reason it brings up a map that you already had open, all you do is go up here to new map and it'll pop up a new map. Just like when you're using Word or Google Docs or anything like that, you hit new and it pops up a new file for you. That's what this is. You have this background map that is used to put all your layers on top of and all your data on top of. If you don't like that, you go up to base map and you select a different map. In this case, I'm going to just select, let me find one that might be a little interesting here. I'm just going to use this human geography one, just for fun. So you can change what the background map looks like. This map isn't designed to have any data associated with it. It's just a background map. It's where you're going to build on top of. It's the foundation. So once we're here, anytime you want to add something to this map, which would include your own data, you go up here to this add section. So there's a couple different navigations that you need to be aware of. Up here is that menu bar that I talked about, if you click on it, that's where you can go back to your content or back to the home page. We're not going to do that. We're going to stay in the map. We have this one here, which includes 3 buttons: details, add, and base map. If you have the organizational, there'll be another one here, which is analysis. That gives you analysis tools. We don't see that in the free account. Base map is how you can switch between base maps, and I can do that at any time. I can switch base maps. It's as easy as a click of a button, where I can just bring up a different base map if I like it. Now, a lot of times what I will do is I will bring up one that I think I will use, but then when I start adding data, I realize that that's too complicated, and I need my base map to be cleaner for the stuff on top of it. I'm going to use this newspaper map just because it's kind of fun as well. It looks like an old newspaper. Then there's this details button. In the details button, this is where you're going to get all the information about the stuff you're adding. Right now, I don't have anything on my map, so details has app about it, tells you how to make some stuff. Content is your different layers, and right now you can see I just have my base layer open, so it tells me this. And then the legend, as I start adding layers, this is what the legend will appear over here. So these 3 things are found under details, but what we're going to be most interested in right now is add. Okay, and I'm just going to show this right now because we're not quite ready for this, but this is where you would add different layers, and there's different types. Actually, there is something we can do right now that I'm going to show you real quick. In add, you can search for layers. So this is what we focused on in the earlier session, where you can actually go online and find existing data layers that are out there. And then there's other ones. And then there's this one that we're going to focus on today, which is add a layer from web, add a layer from the file. We're not going to talk about too much, but that's another option. And then there's add map notes. Now, add map notes is another way where you can add your own data, and I'm just going to show this very, very quickly. This is almost like where you want to draw on the map. So you don't have specific information, but you want to draw on the map. So I zoomed in a little bit. I'm going to add what's called a map notes layer. So I'm going to add map notes, and I'm just going to call this something else. I'm going to say for fun. Just because this is an example, and I wasn't necessarily planning on doing this, but this is relevant to what we're doing. I keep the template the same, and I go ahead and hit create. So now what it does is it gives me all these options. Think of this as your drawing pad. Right, so now I can draw on the map. So if there's specific things that I'm interested in, if I want to put a stick pin at a particular location, I can put, these are for points. So I have a stick pin, a push pin, or a cross. And then if I have text I want to put in, I can do that. If there's lines I want to draw, if there's shapes I want to draw, I can put this, and all this would be on this new layer that I've created. So I'm going to go ahead and do a few of these here. I'm going to go ahead and take a stick pin, and I'm going to plop it right here. And this is where I can now put some information on here. I can say, this was my cool location, and this is a description. I really like to walk around here. If I wanted to add an image, I could do that, and I could add a link as well. I'm good with what this is. I could change a few things. If I want to change the symbol, if I want to change it to something else or change the color, I can do that as well. So it brings me up some options and all sorts of, if I don't like that pin and I want to make it an orange star, I can do that as well. And now I hit close, and that exists on that map now. Now let's say I want to do something else. I want to make this big, I'm going to make a big down arrow, and I'm going to point to my, I'm going to move it over. I'm going to point to my point right there just for fun. And I'm going to say, look at this. And I'm good with that. I'm just going to hit close. Now, what I've done here is I've created this map layer. If I go over to details and I go to content, you will see now I have the newspaper base map, but now I have this new layer that I created. Okay, and it is checked on because they're off. If I check this as off, that layer disappears. You can't see those 2 things that I just created. Now, they're still there. It's in the map. It's just not visually seen right now. So I can hit for fun, and it pops back in there. Now, remember those things that I was titling it, this little orange star? If I click on it, it says, oh, look, this was my cool location. I really like to walk around here. So that stuff that I put in there now appears as a layer. So this is a very, very quick way that you can just basically draw on the map and create a layer if you want to highlight certain things or anything like that. And it stays in there. You can see that as I zoom out, it's got the location. It doesn't move around. It moves to where I posted it. It is geographically based. So that's a very, very simple thing that you can do. But I'm going to show you how to add data that you've been collecting out in the field. Now, to do this, I have found the easiest way is to use Google Sheets. But there are other ways, but I'm going to show you how to do it through Google Sheets because a lot of schools use Google. And so I'm going to go ahead. I've already got a sheet that's open, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. I've created what I'm in the process of is designing a new educational map, and it's going to be focusing on Aldo Leopold. So I've got some data that I've already been interested in. Okay, so what I've done is these are now points. These are each row is a data point. Okay, and what I've done is I've created the data that I want to collect. You can title these whatever you want. What I will tell you though is you're going to want to have at least one column that has something to do with location. Remember, you're creating a map. If you want to upload this information into a map, the map software, ArcGIS, has to understand, it has to know where the map stuff is. So using terms like latitude and longitude, it will understand. If you put in an address feature, it would probably understand. That's if you had an address. I find that latitude and longitude is the easiest. I tend to use decimal for this, and I'll show you why, because a lot of the online stuff is using the decimal, so I don't need to convert it later. So I use a decimal latitude and longitude, and I'll show you how you can get that information too. This was gathered. There's a couple ways you can get it. First of all, you can go get a GPS unit, or your phone might have data collection capability, and you can get that information. I'm going to show you how you can extract that right off of Google Earth here in a minute too, or Google Maps in a minute. So I created a column that says name. So what did I want that data point to be called? A description. If you go, I'm going to go back to this map. So this information here is basically the stuff that's going to potentially appear in that pop-up box. So when I click on this star, it had a name and it had a description, because that's all it provided to me. If you want additional stuff to be included, that's what you do here. So I have a name, a description, I have a latitude and longitude. I've decided to include a picture. Now the picture does have to be web-based. Format that it is right now that ArcGIS uses, the picture has to be online. So you can take a picture, like you can take a picture that exists out there, like this one that I got from foresthistory.org, or it can be a picture that I have on a Google Drive or so on that I've been able to share. Things you can also put a link in there. And I'm going to show you what all this stuff looks like in just a minute, because we're going to input this information into the map here in just a minute. So, but I want to give you an idea. So these are the categories I chose. I could pick something else too. I could have color and do, if I was talking about flowers, maybe I wanted to go mark flower locations, and I wanted to have a column that showed what color flower they were. And I could have red, yellow, orange, blue, whatever, or no flower present. And I could do that throughout my thing. Now, I happen to have created two sheets down at the bottom. You'll see I have one that's on wilderness protection and one that's on wildlife encounters. They're set up the exact same way: name, description, latitude, longitude, picture, and link, but they have different data points in them. The reason I have two is I'm going to show you what this can look like potentially. So I've created this data sheet just in Google Sheets. I've put in my own data. This is unique data that I found, that I've figured out the locations, and now I want to get this information onto my map. And I'm going to show you how easy this is. And again, if you need anything repeated, feel free to put that in the comments. But again, this is also being recorded, so you'll have the opportunity to revisit this later. I will also be accessible by email. And if somebody wanted to later to set up like a Google Hangout or a Zoom meeting to go through some of this stuff in more detail, we can do that as well. But so I've got this. I'm in Google. I'm going to now go up here to File. And there's an option here that says Publish to the Web. So I'm going to click on Publish to the Web. Now from here, I've got a couple different choices. I'm going to only publish this. So this is where do I want to publish the entire document, or do I just want to publish certain sheets? If you remember, I had those two sheets down at the bottom. Right now, I'm just going to do the wilderness protection. I'm going to separate these out. So I just want to publish wilderness protection. Over here, this is the format that you want to publish it as. I don't want to publish it as a web page. I want to publish it as a CSV file. That is essentially an Excel file, or like this file. That works. I found that to work the best when importing it into the map, because it can understand how the data is read. So you put it as a comma separated values. So it says, well, I'm going to share this one page of data. I'm going to share it as comma separated values, and I'm going to publish it to the web. So I hit publish, and it says, are you sure you want to do this? You hit OK. Now understand that you've just published this. It's not like somebody's going to randomly be able to find it, but this is the link on where it's found. I'm going to copy that. Okay, that's all I'm going to do right now. I'm going to copy that, and now I'm going to go back to my map. So I bring up my map. You can still see there's my for fun layer that I created earlier. Now I'm going to do add. And I'm going to do add a layer from the web. Remember, I just published that data sheet to the web. So I hit add the layer to the web. What I want to do is what type of data are you referencing? Remember, we saved it as a CSV file. So I'm going to select CSV file, and I'm going to paste that link that was from Google Earth in there. And now add layer became available, and I hit add layer. Now watch this. Boom, all those data points just popped up. Click of a button, just popped up like that. Now, this is where I get some customization. I'm not going to talk a ton about customization, but I want to address it a little bit. Right now, what it's telling me is it's saying I want each of my data points to be a different color. So I have this. So what it did is it popped up, which attribute do you want to show? So this would be when they see it, which attribute, and I can choose any of those things that I want. I'm going to keep it at name. And then what type of symbols do I want? Do I want each of my data points to be a different color, or do I want them all to be the same? In this case, I'm going to make them all the same color, because what I want them to do is remember, this is one sheet on my page that said wilderness protection. I want that to be one layer, and I want that layer to all be one color. So I'm going to hit that. So I've selected that. Now I have the option to customize if I want. So under options, it'll allow me to change. If I click on symbols, I know this is very, very fast, but I at least want to show you this. If I want to change that right now there's these little black dots. If I want to change them to be blue diamonds, I can do that. If I want to, if I don't, I have all sorts of shapes I can choose from. In fact, let's choose something fun. Let's choose disasters just for fun, and let's make it this little hurricane emblem or cyclone image. I can change how big they appear. So right now you can see this is the dot. This is the image that it's going to be. That's really, really small. So I want to make them a little bit bigger. So I move my symbol size and I hit OK. Now look over here, my map, all those dots turned to little cyclones. Okay. If I'm happy with that, I don't touch this stuff too much. Transparency and visible range, the computer does a pretty good job trying to figure it out. So I don't touch that too much. You could explore that a little bit if you wanted to. I hit OK, and then I hit done. And now that has appeared as its own layer. It defaulted to calling it pub. I don't know why they've decided to do that. If I want to call it something different, I can move over here and I can click the little three dots and it says rename. And I'm going to call it wilderness. I forget what I called that. We'll just call it wilderness because I forgot what I had that data as. So now I've named that layer wilderness. Again, it's an active layer. I can click the box and those points disappear off the map that people can see. It still exists, but it's now, I can determine whether or not people see it. I can turn off my other layer. They still exist. These are two layers that still exist. So we had a question before I go in and repeat this to show you one more time. She said, so this was your Google Drive under your Google account, and then you essentially made that sheet public by uploading it to the web. Yes. So I have a Google account, and I went into my Google Drive and created a new sheet. So I can actually show you that. We can, let's go in here. So I'm back to my data. I'm going to open up a new website. I am in my Google account. I'm going to go here to Google Drive. I don't necessarily need to go to this part. So now I hit new, and I can do, I don't want a doc. Sorry. Let me go here and do this again. I want a, dang it. My computer's, so I create a new sheet, and I could do it this way, and then I could do the same thing. I just go in here and do name, latitude, longitude, et cetera, et cetera. And I create that, and then I do what I showed you before, which I'm going to go ahead and repeat. So yeah, I created a new sheet. In this case, for sake of time, I already had the sheet created. So I'm going to go back to what I had before. So I did this wilderness protection one. We're going to repeat what I just did, but we're going to do it for this one, which is the wildlife encounters. Now this one, wilderness protection, had a whole bunch of data points. Okay. Wildlife encounters only has 2. So the data is going to look a little different when it pops up. But here we are. I go back here now to file. I go to publish to the web. This time I don't want the entire document. This time I'm going to select the other page, wildlife encounters. I'm going to switch it to comma separated values, and I'm going to hit publish. I confirm that I want it published, and now it brings up the link. This is the link just for that data. I go back to my map. You can still see my other data point is up there. I'm going to go in and change the name again because now I remember that it was called Wilderness Protection. So I'm going to call it Wilderness Protection now. And I'm going to go ahead and add. So I've still got those in there. I'm going to go ahead and add the layer from the web because that's just where I publish it. Because I've already been working in here, it says a CSV file is already selected, but if it wasn't, I would go in here and select a CSV file. I would paste it. My add layer becomes visible. And now this one's zoomed in because these are two data points and they're very close to each other. It's these two data points here. There's a blue one here and a red one here. Now it defaulted again, thinking I want each of them to be different. Maybe that's what you want with your data. In this case, I don't. I'm going to select that I want these two symbols to be the same symbol. Select. I can do options now, and I can choose what I want that symbol to look like. And I have a couple different options. I can, if I want it to be a certain color, if I want the outline to be a certain color, if I want a shape. Let's pick a different one here now. Let's pick points of interest. These are all things that are in here. And let's just make the little airplane just for this fun. It's a really, really small airplane, so I want to make it bigger so that it shows up a little bit, and I hit OK. Now you can see there's an airplane here, and there's an airplane there. As I zoom out, you can still see the airplanes, but now you start to see the other data layers that are there. Okay. Now the size of your image will remain the same. So notice that the airplane size doesn't get smaller as I zoom out. It remains the same so that I can see it in the context of my larger image. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK and done to show that I'm done. And look, my new layer has appeared in my layer area. Again, it defaulted to calling it pub. I'm going to go in here and rename it. And this one is called Wildlife Encounters. Okay. So now I've got 3 layers that I just created in the sake of about 25 minutes. And obviously, they're not legitimate. I mean, I would want to clean them up a little bit, do stuff with them. But here's what's cool about it. All those things that you saw on the data sheet, if I go on and click on this point right here, notice there's the pop-up, right? And it tells me all those categories that I created, these are the column descriptions: name, description, latitude, longitude, picture, and link. Those are all included in there. It was brought over with the latitude and longitude. So now I've been able to embed all of this information into there. What's cool about it is, like I said, I included a picture. So there's this happens to be an old historic picture of the Grand Canyon that was embedded into there. And if I want to have a link, if I want to send somebody somewhere, but if they click on this point and then I want to give them more information, I just happen to have a link to the Grand Canyon National Park that it goes to as well. So I've embedded that information into that data that I've uploaded in instantaneously. Now, I'm going to show you a couple more things while we're inside this map, and then I'm going to show you another way to get those latitude and longitude using Google Maps, or you could actually use this as well. So take note of what this looks like: the name, description, latitude, longitude, picture, and link. Let's say I don't want to give all this information, but let's say I want to control which of those columns that people can see. Right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over under Wilderness Protection. And it gives me, there's all sorts of options I have. If I want to change the symbol, so let's say I didn't like these little cyclone things, I can always go back. And now it gives me the option. I'm back to here, to my default was location. There's a new option now for heat map. I'm not going to do that. That's where it does like a, almost like it puts them together. In fact, let's look at what that does. Notice now what it's doing is it's giving me a little bit, and there's some other features in here. So it's giving me a range type data. It's shifted my data a little bit. I'm going to go back in here. I don't like these little cyclones, so I'm going to change it to something else. Since I'm using an airplane on the other one, let's use a boat for these ones. And I still like that side. The boat's a little bit larger than the airplane, so I'm going to move this down. So now we've got boats and airplanes. Okay, just for the heck of it. I changed it that quickly. I go ahead and hit done. But so I've got some other features in here in Wilderness Protection. And one of those is this thing that says remove pop-up. So if you don't want the pop-up to appear at all, you can do that. But I want to configure the pop-up. Remember, the pop-up is what happens when you click on the button. When you click on that point, it brings up that little box. I'm going to configure the pop-up. This is what it does. You can say show pop-ups. If you want to take away the ability for them to see the pop-ups, you can just mark uncheck show pop-ups, and then nothing will happen when they click on it. You can decide what you want the title of the pop-up to be. Right now, it's just doing the name of the whatever pops up there. I don't switch a lot of this stuff up. You can look at this a little bit, but really in here, this configure attributes, this blue hyperlink piece in here where I do configure attributes. This is now shows all the things that are in that. And over here, I check which ones I want to be seen. Now, when I do this, I tend to remove the latitude and longitude just because they can see where it is on the Earth. And somebody just looking at a latitude and longitude, for most people, that doesn't mean anything. So I think it's extra information. I use the latitude and longitude to put it on the map, but I don't need the people to see the latitude and longitude. So I'm going to go ahead and switch those off. You will notice that I have some options. If I do keep latitude and longitude in there, I can decide how many decimal spaces it should be down to. It defaults to 2, but you can do more. I'm going to take away latitude and longitude, though. They're still going to exist on the data. They're just not going to appear in the pop-up anymore. I hit OK. I'm fine with everything else. I hit OK. Now, when I click on this pop-up, notice the latitude and longitude disappeared. Now, all I see is the name, the description, the picture, and the link. I can take away, it still exists, it's still in my data file, but you're limiting what people can see. So this is where I always stick with the end of, if there's a chance that you think you might be interested in that data later on, you should include it in your data sheet. But because you can always limit, you don't have to show everybody everything, right? So you can control the data that's available to them. Now, you'll notice that my other layer, the latitude and longitude, still goes on because I haven't edited that one yet. All I did was edit the wilderness protection one. If I want this layer to be the same, I would go into configure pop-ups. I would go over here to configure attributes, and I would remove latitude and longitude. And now, once I hit OK, now it does the same thing. Latitude and longitude is now removed from the pop-up. And you can always go back and change that again by doing the same thing that I just did. So we've just created 3 layers. I've shown you how to do a rough customization of the layers and how to change them and what you can control. The last thing I want to show you before we sort of get to some questions and answers is I want to bring up, well, let's go ahead and do this here. I'm going to go to open up a new browser, and I'm going to open up Google Maps. If you don't have the opportunity to get out in the field, which I understand could be difficult now, you can't necessarily have your students going out unless they're walking the neighborhood and they want to mark some locations. But even that, if they don't have a GPS unit or they don't have the capacity to extract the information off of their phone, what you can do is if they're familiar with an area, they can actually bring up a map like this. And I'm going to switch over to satellite. Remember, this is all GIS, right? So this is information. I'm switching to a satellite view. I can do that because of GIS, and I'm in the Phoenix metro area. Basically, there's Tempe Beach Park. But let's say I want a data point. I've zoomed in, and I'm really interested in this area along the Salt River here, along Tempe Beach Park, and I like this particular bush right here. I don't know what it is, but I'm really intrigued by it. So I'm going to mark this. All I'm doing is going to click on it. Now it's going to tell me. Notice here it popped up with the latitude and longitude. I could try to copy and paste that, or I can just click on it, and what it's going to do is it's now shifted and brought me up information about that particular plant that I'm looking at. But here is the cool information. There's the latitude and longitude right there in the address bar. So I take this 33.431667, and I'm going to go ahead and add that in here. Let me see. Let's go back here. So earlier I created this random spreadsheet. Okay, right? So I had this one. I'm now going to go into this random spreadsheet that I just created. I'm going to paste that latitude that I just copied off of the website, 33.431667 there. I'm going to go back now and get the longitude. Again, right up here, it's this -111. Go back to that spreadsheet. I'm going to put that in as a longitude. And we're just going to call this random plant. Okay. Now, I've just done that for one plant. I could go through and mark a bunch of these plants if I wanted to. I'm just going to mark the one because you'll get the picture. Actually, let's go ahead and we'll mark one more. Now I'm going to go a little bit further away, and I'm going to mark this plant right here. I'm interested in that plant right there. Again, there's my latitude and longitude. I'm going to go ahead and copy the latitude. Back here, add another point. I'm going to show you how easy this is just from taking data right off the internet. Copy and paste it right into here. I'm going to call this one Cool Plant. All right, so now I've got this, I've just created this simple thing. If I wanted to, I could do color like I was talking about before. Let's say this one was green and this one was also green. Just because we want to. So I've just created that. I can make this whatever I want. I could say horoscope sign. What kind of horoscope sign does this plant have? And this one's a Scorpio and this one's a Taurus. Just for fun. Again, all I'm showing you is it doesn't matter what data you put in there, right? As long as you have a location on Earth, this other data doesn't matter. You can put in whatever you want. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to go File. Notice I haven't done anything else. I haven't even named the spreadsheet. I'm going to go over here to File. I'm going to say Publish to the Web. I'm going to go ahead and just say Sheet 1. I could say entire document, but it doesn't matter. Go back to comma separated values, hit Publish, confirm that I want it published, hit Copy. Now I'm going to go back to my ArcGIS map, which was on here, I think, actually. So I'm back here on my ArcGIS map, and I'm going to add this new layer. So I'm going to add layer from the web, still a CSV file. I paste it. It's going to add the layer. Now watch this. I had no idea what those plants were. There's one of them that appears right there. There's the two plants right there. Okay, and look, they're pretty close to what they were. There's the Tempe Town Lake, and there's that other field over there. I'm going to go ahead and change this. I want them all to be a same thing. We're going to go ahead and change the symbol. We were using these aircraft things, so let's go ahead and do a hiker. Let's turn this one into a hiker, and let's make the hiker really, really big, just for the fun. We'll hit OK. We'll hit OK. We'll hit Done. And look at that. Now it's a new layer. I can rename it if I want to. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but those two hikers are now getting really close. And as I scroll out, you'll start to see the other data points. Those guys are really, really close to each other, so that it's a little bit, it loses the ability to see some of it as it gets closer, as it gets too far out. But they're still there. If I click on them, it tells me cool plant. There's the latitude and longitude, also green. Horoscope sign is Taurus. So it doesn't matter what information you include. If I can go in there and I can customize that box all I want. Okay. So with that, I know I threw a ton of stuff at you, but I want to make sure that I wanted to get you started on this process and show you what you can do and what the power that you can do. There is a lot of other things that you can do, especially if you were to get the more advanced organizational account, but you can see I was doing this with the free account. Once I've done that, all I need to do is save it. So I go here and save. I should probably just show you how to do that again. We're going to do this as Webinar Map 2. I'm going to add a tag. Tags are just searchable terms that they can use later. Esri does require you to have at least one tag. The description is optional, but I hit Save Map. And now the map is saved. You notice up here now it says Webinar Map 2. If I was to go back to my content, you would see that the map that I created earlier was Webinar Test, and then Webinar Map 2 is the one that I just created. If I click on it, it's going to give me information. This is going to show me some information about it. And then I have the ability to go back and see it in the map viewer. And I can go back here and edit it now. So even though I've saved it, I can go back in and I can make more changes to it if I want to. Now, if I'm ready to share it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share. And this is where I have the options here where I hit everyone, or I can hit members. If I've created groups, this is where if you have the organizational account, this is a free account and I have created some groups, which you can do when I've done some other workshops. But when you have an organizational account, you potentially are dividing this up into classes or groups. You could have that in here. So you could share it so that only people of certain groups could see this map if you didn't want it to go public. I'm going to go ahead and mark public on it. And once I've done that, it gives me this link. This link is now the link that people can find the map out. And then I would hit done. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bring that map up in a little bit, but I want to make sure that we're done in here, because if I go and bring up this map, it's going to bring it up in my account. And so you're going to see it in my account. You're not going to see what it looks like what the general public would see it looking like because I'm logged in. But so I want to make sure that I'm going to leave this up for a few minutes and see if there's any questions. If anybody wants anything specifically that I've done repeated, we can do that. Or if they have any questions about some stuff in here. Actually, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and log out. Log out. So I've logged out of my account. I'm going to go in here now, and I'm just going to paste that link that was provided on my map. I made it public. So notice it says sign in over here. It doesn't, so I'm not signed in. This is just a public map on here now. And there's the map. And so if I go over here to content, people can now have the option to turn on and off different settings. So if they didn't want to see the wildlife encounters, which was the airplane one, they can take those off. Just like we were doing earlier with the habit map. I can take the for fun one off, but all those are on there. You can see that my pub, which was the last one I added, which was the hikers, is grayed out because at the scale that I'm looking at, you can't see them. As soon as I zoom in, they start to pop up, and now the pub is now appeared on here. So you can send this link to students where they can navigate through. You can embed it into a website. So if you're using Google Classroom where you have some kind of website, you can embed the map onto a website. There's all different types of things you can do under that share feature. So with that, there's one more thing I want to show you. When we're done here, when you log out, you should probably get a survey, but there's been some issues. Not everybody's getting the surveys, and I totally understand that. If you do get a survey when we're done here, once you exit out of the program, a survey should pop up. It's got 5 or 6 questions that just, give me some feedback on what's going on. If not, that's fine. You can always email me some feedback if there's anything important you think that I should know about today. Then in about an hour, you're going to get an automated email message from the system, from the WebEx system, that's going to say thank you for attending, yada, yada, yada. And then probably tomorrow, it's going to take me a little bit of time, but tomorrow I'm going to send a follow-up email. And in that follow-up email are going to be 3 docs. There's going to be some links to some information. It's going to link you to Arcgis Online if you forgot how to get there. It's going to link you to the Esri schools account. So if you want to get the school organizational account, I'm going to provide those links to you in that email. But I'm also going to have 3 documents attached to it. One of the documents is going to be your certificate for 1 hour of professional development. And the other document is going to be these 2 here. This is our map tips document. And I created this for a different workshop, but it was relevant today. Everything that we just talked about, I've put down here in step-by-step directions. So creating a new map. How do you go about creating a new map? Selecting a base map. This is the one from the earlier session, adding or modifying a data layer from an online source. So if you missed the earlier session, you now have the ability to go look at what we did on there. But here's the information on adding a layer in map notes. So this was the drawing tab where I added the arrow and I added the orange star. This is how to go about doing that. Adding layer from your own spreadsheet. So here's the information on adding a layer from your own spreadsheet. Then it tells you how to customize. Then here's saving and sharing an original layer. Here's changing the style of a layer. So when I went in there and changed it to make it the boat and the airplane, that shows you how to do that. So if you forgot how to do that, that's going to be included. Customizing the pop-up map, and then finally sharing the map. So these are going to be step-by-step directions, so that you can see how this works. The other one you're going to get is the one I shared at the earlier session as well. These are potentially useful data layers. We didn't talk about this in this session, but it's still going to be useful for you. If you do want to use online data sources that are within ArcGIS, here's the names of some online data sources that you can use to add to your map. These are existing layers that you can just simply import into your map. And I'll provide a brief little description of how to do that on the email that's coming. So you're going to get those 3 documents in there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to our presentation. Tell you that we do have a couple more. I just opened up 2 more webinars since everybody's basically out of school, and I know teachers they're busy teaching in this new digital format, but you're also looking for new ways to get some resources and things like that. I'm offering 2 more webinars the following 2 Fridays. So this Friday, I'm doing one on citizen science, in which we're going to focus on a program called iNaturalist, which is a web-based program where students can upload animals and plants that they see, even if they're just walking around their neighborhood or they're sitting in their backyard and they see a really cool bird. They can take a picture of it, they can add information, but it also has the ability for you to add projects. So you could create classroom projects where every kid has to post the animals that they're seeing in their backyard, for example. We're going to talk about that on Friday. And the next Friday, we're going to be talking about using live webcams. So all of these popular webcams, these Eagle cams and Owl cams, how can you use those in an educational fashion rather than just watching them to see the little babies? And we're going to talk about how you can use them to study animal behavior. If you're interested in any of those or any more, that's what I have right now. And I suspect that over the next few weeks, I'll be adding additional webinars. This is the short link to go to our educator PD page, our calendar. But even then, if you don't get from there, you can just go to our main website, azgft.gov/focuswild, and you can click on workshops, and that's where you'll get some information. So this is my email. I'm going to suggest that you email me if you have questions. I'm not in the office right now. I am checking my phone messages, but not super often. Email is the best way to get in touch with me. If you have questions, I'm going to go through. I know there's a couple questions that have popped up in here. I'm going to go ahead and answer those. And if you still have more, feel free to write those in here. If you don't have any questions and you don't really want to, and you're done, you're free to log out at any time. And hopefully, I thank you for coming out and participating. But I am going to go ahead and use this time now to answer any questions that might have popped up. And so you have a few minutes to type in if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to answer a few that have popped up here. Suzanne talks about how that was a lot of work to put the handout together. I appreciate that it was, but I developed it for some other workshops and I felt that it was useful for this one, so I wanted to include that in there. She then asked, can you give a couple of examples of how Game and Fish has used this tool in a practical way to conduct research or manage wildlife, etc.? Just some examples. So we use, I will tell you that I probably couldn't name a government agency that doesn't use GIS. Most government agencies probably have their own GIS department or section. If not, then there's a GIS department like within that government, like state government might have its own GIS section in which people go to them. We have a GIS section at Game and Fish where we can develop our own maps and do all of our own analysis. I don't have a lot of those loaded up here, but what I can tell you is it has become incredibly useful for us. So when we're tracking animals, we put a radio collar on an animal. That data comes to a spreadsheet, right? We can take that information, we can load it from the collar basically to our computer to these types of maps, and we can start to learn how animals are moving through their area. One of the things that we did recently, well, not recently, this is probably about 12 years ago, but we're still doing projects like this. I showed you the wildlife connectivity map earlier where it talked about the linkages and where we need them. Well, we're using maps like that to figure out where we need to prioritize building structures and crossing, increasing the ability for animals to move across habitats. And one of those areas was Highway 260, which is outside of Payson. So you head outside Payson and you go up the rim and you head up towards Heber. So the stretch of highway between Star Valley, which is just east of Payson, and up to the top of the rim, basically after Christopher Creek. That was one of the highest places in the state for elk vehicle collisions in the state about 12 years ago. Well, ADOT, the Department of Transportation, was interested in widening that road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And in the process of widening, there was great concern that we were going to increase the number of elk vehicle collisions. And that's huge. I mean, you hit a 600-pound bull elk with full antlers, you might not survive that collision. And certainly the elk's probably not going to survive it either. So there's a public safety aspect, there's an animal safety aspect of trying to get animals off the highway. So we were interested in building crossing structures, in this case underpasses, so the elk could go under the road instead of crossing directly on top of the road. So we use this type of technology. What we did was we got collars. We put radio collars on a number of elk that we captured along the highway, and we studied their movements for years, 2, 3, 4 years. And we studied where are they moving in this area? How are they using the habitat? Where are they trying to cross? Because the challenge of building a crossing structure is we can't go out there and we can't train the animals to cross where we want them to cross. We need to take advantage of their biology. So where are they trying to cross? And is it possible to build a crossing structure at that location? So we were able to use the animals' movement data, put them into mapping software like this, figure out the best location to build those bridges or those crossing structures, and then we could build them and then hopefully get the animals to use them. And we've had tremendous success there. We've done something similar with bighorn sheep on the way to Vegas. We've done some, we're working on some others. There's a bighorn sheep crossing north of Tucson. So we're doing a lot of that. That's one of our biggest examples of where we use this stuff. But we use it to trap, or not trap, to track our wolves, for example, or anything like that. So those are some examples of how we do this. But everyone uses, even your pizza delivery people use this. The police use this. It's used in basically every government function. I heard an example of UPS put all their routes into GIS software like this to try to figure out how they could save money and how they could build more efficient routes. And through it, they were able to determine that if their people made nothing but right turns, if they could create the route with the least number of left turns, then they could actually increase the efficiency of their routes by a significant amount. And so they were able to do that through this type of technology. So Amazon is using it, UPS, FedEx, the post office are all using these types of examples. All right, so I'm done. I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes. I'm going to mute my microphone. If you have any last minute questions still coming through, I welcome them. But otherwise, if you're done, feel free to log out. This was recorded, so it'll be available the recording will be available later, but you'll get that email from me tomorrow, most likely. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and mute for a little bit just in case there's any last minute questions. Thanks for coming out, guys.